Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1992 and we're going to be taking a look at the much requested band Spinal Tap, and they're going to be performing The Majesty of Rock, and this comes from the Freddie Mercury tribute concert. So we'll get these guys up on screen and see how they get on.
Day grows long, and the tempo, the tides of the moon. It's all around us and it's everywhere, and it's deeper than royal blue. And it feels so real, you can feel the feeling. And that's the majesty of rock, the fantasy of roll, the ticking of the clock, the wailing of the soul, the prisoner in the dark, the digger in the hole. We're in this together and together. The shade of a jungle glade, or the rush of the rushing street. On the plain, on the foamy lane, you can never escape from the beat. It's in the mud and it's in your blood, and its conquest is complete. And all that you can do is just surrender to the majesty of rock, the mystery of roll, the burning of the song, the sparring of the gold. The farmer takes a wife, the farmer takes a pole. We're in this together and together.
I'm just going to jump in here because this is one of those videos that, like I said, has been requested a lot, and a lot of people have asked me whether Spinal Tap play the instruments themselves or whether they mime playing or if they mime singing as well. But these guys are playing live. This is an example of their ability, but also putting on the show and staying in character. And there's no way that you can say to an actor to act the sound of an A, a B, an E minor shape on the guitar and get it to sound like that coming out of an amp. So these guys can definitely play. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with the movie, and I will be referring to them as Spinal Tap and their stage names that they have. And we've just been through Nigel's little solo section, which of course he is known for, and having the playing in the riff that starts off the whole song, there was actually a lot of problems to begin with at the beginning of this performance, and you would be forgiven for thinking that they'd written this in as a little sketch before they started playing, but it went on for too long to be a sketch, and it was a 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes, or even longer, where they couldn't get Nigel's guitar to work, but eventually they got there. It's an interesting throwback to the movie where you'd have a parody of a particular performance where things would go wrong, and then they do play live and things go wrong. So it's almost like it's so relatable because they just showed you exactly what it was like, and what it was like for so many bands if you have been in a regularly gigging band and you watch Spinal Tap, you can relate to so many things in there. So we've already addressed that this is all live. The only thing that's going on that we can hear that isn't on stage is the keys. And there is a choral type sound that's coming in, which will be on the keys as well, just in sections to fill out the sound. So once you've got that underlayer of keys in there, it is going to tie everything together. So jumping into the guitar work by Nigel and just breaking his character a little bit by mentioning Christopher Guest, who plays Nigel, because the technique that you can hear is just Christopher's playing. You do not act this accurately when you are playing a riff, but also you don't start to implement techniques that make the playing clearer, such as palm muting, without having some serious hours under your belt. And that's exactly what we get in the intro. We're in E here. If you want to play along, that's your starting key. I've just busted out the guitar because it's going to be easier for me to show you guys what I mean, especially if you don't play the guitar and you don't know what techniques I'm referring to. So starting in E, our intro riff is along those lines, and there's all downstrokes actually when we're playing it. And playing it like that is absolutely fine. I'm leaving the strings open, but a slightly more advanced technique when you are picking through a riff or playing any kind of lead, you can rest on the strings with your palm, and it's called palm muting, and then you start to get this sound. So the note dies more quickly, and if you are playing a riff, it now makes it more concise, and you don't get all of that ringing out of the strings, and there's just a hint of a palm mute on the intro that's being played here. So Christopher, to give him his real name, is applying techniques that he has learned not just to play this part, but as a guitarist. The other thing that we've got as we lead into the verse, we've got this pick scrape down the strings, which then leads it into the first chord. And again, that is just one of those techniques that when you're into playing lead guitar, you experiment with these things and you just add them to your arsenal, and it's just the perfect time to use that, and it's all being played. So we've got a fully live performance here, even though you might think it's a little bit of a parody performance, and I am going to touch on that a little bit later, as to how good you've got to be to pitch this right, because they're not playing really badly and then it's funny because it's really bad. They're pitching this in exactly the right spot so that it's just good enough to be acceptable, and you could believe that it's a band, but not so good that it's really amazing and they blow everybody else off the stage. The other thing that you might not notice going on with the rhythm guitar when the verse starts, of course we start to look at David with the lead vocal, so we can't see Nigel playing it, but we've got this E going on and we've got a gallop in the rhythm, so that means that we're going down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. And it gets that personality to it where you can start to hear the heavier genres of music, because a lot of them do rely on this rhythmic pattern going on in the background, but this is always going through with that gallop. And the important thing about this is there's palm muting applied to that as well. So another slightly more advanced version of if you were just playing going, which is fine if you want that fuller sound. And when you're getting into the verse and you want the vocal to sit on top of that, you apply palm muting because you don't want the rhythm guitar to be competing with the lead vocal. You only want one focus. So it means that once you've got that palm mute on the rhythm, something can sit over the top of that so much more easily than if I was going and making a focal point of the rhythm guitar. Obviously, it's so well done that you are focusing on the act and the song and the lyrical content, because that's another thing about all of the Spinal Tap songs. The lyrical content is so meaningful in a meaningless way, because it sounds really deep, but it doesn't really make any sense, but it's just so well written. And this is the thing, that it is a parody, but it is so well done that you can listen to it on a musical level. I always say that sometimes when I'm watching a top singer-songwriter, it's good to follow along with the lyrical content and have that up on screen while you're listening to the performance, because you can get an appreciation of the meaning of the song and maybe concentrate on the words a little bit more than you would if you were just watching the performance, especially if you do play the guitar and you're looking at their techniques that they're using on their guitars if they are playing and singing at the same time. The same can be said here. Get the lyrics up on screen, because there is so much in there that is funny to read along with, but is so representative of so many other bands and so many other artists who have lyrics that could be really deep, but it's just the way that Spinal Tap do it. So if you haven't got the lyrics to this up on screen, I suggest you do, because you'll be in for a treat. A personal favourite of mine is "And It Feels So Real, You Can Feel the Feeling." And for me, this is what the lyrics are all about. It starts off sounding like it's going to be profound and really deep and have hidden meaning in there, but then it just peters out into not meaning anything and being really straightforward, but it sounds like it could mean something. A quick shout out to Rick Shrimpton on drums here, who is the twin brother of Mick, who passed away at the end of the movie. But in all seriousness, so solid throughout this whole performance. The rhythm section is solid. We have Derek playing bass here. You can see the way that he's picking the bass. He's just using his first finger and second finger to pluck the strings, and he's just keeping that solid. So he could have played with a pick, but he is playing with his fingers, and we don't get a great mix on the bass, so we don't really get to hear it clearly, but he is playing the bass and just thrashing away at those strings in time, making all of the correct movements for the verse, where we have the open E and then down to the G and the A. It's all in there. But let's finish off watching the rest of the video.
When we die, do we haunt the sky? Do we learn to number of the sea? What then? Are we born again? Just to sit asking questions like these? I know, for I totally know, that stories of viewpoint and dreams. The more it stays the same, the less it changes. That's the majesty of life.
And there we have it. In all seriousness as well, looking at this shot right at the end, in order for these guys to perform in front of this many people, considering that they are actors and are just using their own ability. Of course, I think if you guys look into Rick Shrimpton's past and who he's played with, you'll know that he is a top drummer, but you only have to listen to it for a few seconds to understand that this isn't a bunch of guys that can't play who are trying to play, and it's really rubbish, and it's funny because it's rubbish. It's funny because it is so good. Also, talking about this as a song and a live performance of an album track, because let's not forget that these guys recorded the soundtrack for the movie in the studio, so they've got the ability. It is these guys who did it. So when these guys were filming Spinal Tap, they were a working band. They'd be in the studio recording and getting everything down for the overdubs that would then happen after they've shot the scenes, and all of those overdubs have got to be accurate accurate, so they couldn't just get people in to play. They probably could have, but it wouldn't have been the same because these guys just nailed how good they should be, so that it isn't quite good enough. And that's why it is so impressive, because if they were too good, it wouldn't work. And if it was really bad, it still wouldn't work, because you'd have nothing authentic about this Spinal Tap band. And that is what is so clever. This band, even though it's fictional, have got an identity and they've got an authenticity to the point where you could say that this is a great live rendition of the album track. Just quickly getting the guitar out again to show you guys the subtle technique that's in there with Nigel when he's playing his solo, because to give you the key, as a reference, we're still in E minor, and the bend that he hits is quite a big one, but he then applies a little bit of pinched harmonic in there. So we've got this. That's a technique that you do not learn just picking up the guitar for the first time. It is months and years of practice to consistently hit pinched harmonics. So it's something, again, that's in there. It probably will fly under the radar because of the overall spectacle of the band, but these tiny little advanced techniques that just are thrown in there by Nigel with his solos. Like I said, he's known for them, but that's why, because of these really subtle techniques in there. Just as I've got the guitar out, we've got the end solo as well that starts. And it's that kind of thing. So there is definite melody in there, technique, bends, accuracy, and a guitar player is in there. You can't deny, anybody that does play the guitar will know that this is all legit and everything that he's playing is on the fretboard. So a bit of a fun video for tonight. And just to break the illusion at the end, we had Michael McKean, who played David, and Nigel was played by Christopher Guest, and Harry Shearer played Derek, and then Rick Parnell played Rick Shrimpton. And just talking about these guys as a band, because when the movie was released, people that didn't see the movie might have heard the album, and a lot of people did assume that Spinal Tap were a band and that was their album that they released. So they can't be half bad if people thought that they were actually a band from the strength of that release that went with the movie. But thank you guys so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Rock!